Good. I will share my screen and we'll go straight to the first slide. I shall give a series of slides with technical descriptions and then we will have a discussion. I want to get rid of the control bar, which gets in the way. That's much easier for me. I would like you all to be muted, please. If you would switch off your microphone, that's much easier for me. We all know, I think, that this, as far as personalities is concerned, concerns just one person, and that, of course, is Elon Musk. Elon Musk is one of those people that always has his eye on the future. In his case, the 22nd century, and his firm belief that sooner or later Homo sapiens will spread. Here's a picture of Mars. Just there are 3 starships in the corner there on the left-hand side, and I think that's a wonderful vision, and it's one that I share and have shared for many years. Many of us will have grandchildren that will see the 22nd century, and we have no idea what it will be like. But of course, Elon Musk has the distinction of actually creating what his view is, his vision is. To do that, he has to make rockets, fire them up, and catch them as they return. Catch them because landing with your motors, your rocket motors on it, is dodgy. So he has this device that you see on the left called the Mechazilla, and it has chopsticks to catch the vehicles as they arrive. Here's one. Here's a plan of what Mechazilla looks like. A Star Booster has arrived back and it's landed on the chopsticks, and those grid fins are holding it in place. The booster, you should be aware, is almost empty at this point, but it has 30 Raptor engines in the bottom, 30 of them, and it weighs 240 tons, roughly speaking. The job of the chopsticks is to pick up the Starship and the Starbooster and put them on the launch deck, which is here. We'll look a bit more at the launch deck. With this video, you can see that a Starship has just been placed on top of the booster. And this is a wet dress rehearsal, which actually took place this week on Tuesday. And this is a film of that wet dress rehearsal. The first time the entire rocket was fueled up. It was not actually fired up. On the right here are the storage tanks for liquid methane and liquid oxygen, cryogenically cooled, so that they can be condensed and loaded into the Starbooster, which is this part of the vehicle. And that is the Starship on the top. That is the bit that goes into space, and the Starbooster goes up about 100 miles and then returns and lands. And it lands grabbed by a pair of chopsticks. Let's continue that. Sorry about the noise. The booster is being fueled by the methane and the oxygen in the tanks there by pipes leading under the ground and fed into the booster via the launch deck. Launch deck is actually quite a complicated bit of apparatus. I'll switch off the video in a minute. The launch deck actually, I will tell you about in more detail later on. on the left-hand side, you'll see that as the fuel is going in, it's causing frost to appear on the stainless steel outer of the booster. Methane at the top, liquid oxygen at the bottom. We'll continue with that refueling. The launch deck actually has 20 pumps and tanks, and that is what is used to refuel and relight the motors. Of course, the outer 20 are only used for launching. The liquid methane tank is full now and it vents. They didn't stop it fast enough. I'm going to talk about two dangers that this process has to regard. The first and most important probably is re-entry. When the Starship booster, the Starbooster, re-enters it from 100 miles up, and it requires to turn so that it approaches belly first. It cannot go nose first. I'm using the shuttle as an example of this because we all are aware of the shuttle disaster. The last shuttle landed in August 2011, and that led to 11 years of ignominy for NASA, since they had to ask politely the Russians if they could use Soyuz in order to service the International Space Station. That cost them $90 million per seat, and NASA spent nearly $4 billion servicing the International Space Station via the Soyuz in Kazakhstan. The shuttle is very interesting. The cause of the problems lie largely in the configuration of the underside, bearing in mind that it was landing belly first. And these tiles, there were 24,300 of them, needed to be glued onto the base of shuttle, and they were all different shapes and sizes, and they had to be accurately fitted because any gap would cause a problem and possibly lead to a dangerous crash. The problems lie in the fact that the glue that was used to glue the tiles on dried very quickly. A remedy involved the technician spitting in the glue to slow down the drying process. And that was common practice until 1988, when a hazard study revealed that spit weakened the adhesive's bonding strength. No surprise there, spit, of course, is not simply liquid. It is a mucus produced by the mouth, and that contains all sorts of chemicals. And that loosened the glue that held the oddly shaped tiles in place. The wing got additionally hot, and that had to withstand a temperature of 2,500 degrees centigrade during re-entry, belly first. That led to the disaster that I've just described. Elon Musk and the Starbooster have adopted a different tactic. Simple geometric hexagonal tiles, easily manufactured, mass manufactured. And this is a view of the Starbooster having tiles reapplied. The other problem that is a major problem is the accuracy of landing and managing to navigate a booster as it comes plummeting down from 100 miles high and grabbing it with the chopsticks. It actually lands with the grid fins, you can see there, resting on the chopsticks, as we saw in an earlier diagram. Let's see. This is an artistic representation. This has not happened yet. The booster has dropped off, and it's now going to turn using cold gas thrusters and the grid fins in order to come down through the dense part of the atmosphere belly first. When it is closer to the ground and before it goes through the speed of sound, it converts to a vertical configuration and continues on down. We'll watch that happen. Navigation, of course, is vital at this point. You can see that it's just passing through the chopsticks, clunk, 250 tons of Starbooster grabbed, and the Mechazilla then moves it to the correct position and swings it round in order to place it on the launch deck for further servicing. We'll talk a little bit more about that process later on. The Starbooster is now ready to be primed and ready to light the blue touch paper and retire for the next vehicle. We talk about cold gas thrusters. It's interesting that quite recently, Elon Musk was saying that they were thinking of designing something called hot gas thrusters, which have not been tried before, not using liquid nitrogen, but using the ullage gas from inside the tanks, because, of course, when the booster lands, it still has some residual fuel inside it. And in order to get rid of that, it must be vented before it can be approached, and they can start reconfiguring and refilling the tanks. Musk has some good experience of navigation, accuracy of navigation. It's very important. And we can see this particular Falcon Heavy twin landings that took place a few months ago. And both of those are landing in the center of the target area. And that's important, as we will hear later on. When landing on a floating platform, of course, it's not quite so accurate, but that's no surprise. But still, that particular booster, a Falcon 9 booster, has landed within the area that the chopsticks would be able to cope with. Not so for the Starship itself, the business bit. When those return from space or wherever they've been, they navigate using the fins top and bottom, and they are not quite as accurate or as useful as the grid fins. That particular one, I think if you are following SpaceX, this is SN20, a test, a successful test, they said, landing, but it's not on the target area, and that would actually present a hazard if it was landing and hoping to be grabbed by chopsticks. On the right, you can see the beginning of the construction of the launch deck. So this has taken some year or so ago. Well, I'm going to stop sharing and we'll have some sort of a discussion. I hope that was fruitful and interesting, but I would like 10 minutes, if you don't mind, no, 10 seconds actually, to give a personal point of view. I saw an interview with Elon Musk, which took place quite recently, and he was asked a question, if the chopsticks are moving towards grabbing a descending rocket booster, what happens if the booster isn't central and one chopstick touches it before the other chopstick? In effect, is it sensitive enough to know that, or does it just continue? And Musk looked distinctly uncomfortable, but replied, well, we hope it doesn't do that. Now, that answer doesn't mollify me at all. All I can say is you wouldn't get me in one of those, frankly. The advantage of using the traditional sort of engineering is that because it's cost plus, Boeing and Lockheed have to, although they make quite sure that they get enough margin in order to have a profit for themselves, but they do the job properly. And I regret that I'm not happy with Elon Musk's suck it and see approach to rocket engineering. And on that note, I will invite you to unmute yourself, a quick bit of administration. If you want to comment or ask a question, put one hand up. Not a finger, please, a hand. If you want to interrupt somebody who's speaking, put two hands up and you will be permitted to interrupt for one sentence only. No speeches. Okay, who's first? Thank you, John Ramage. I see you, and I see Donald Denham.
Okay, well, it's an interesting talk. I wonder, is there the Falcon 9 rocket has been very successful. It's landed accurately tens of times without problems. Why have they gone over to this, what seems a bit more of a hairy landing technique? Is it because of the weight of the Starship booster, or is there some other problem? It seems once they've developed the landing system on legs, it seems a shame to go away from it.
Right. My answer is I don't know. Does anyone else know? Lee, have you got an answer to that?
I think it's just sheer size of the rocket and the number of engines underneath it. 30 engines blasting out. I know they'll only be firing a number of 2 or 3 of them on descent, but the actual booster's got, I think it's 150 metric ton lifting capability, so it's very, very much bigger than even the Falcon Heavy.
Right, Donald, did you have your hand up?
I did, thanks, Tom. I had a couple of questions and a philosophical comment to make, if I might. Just to go back to the Challenger tiles, the 24,000 tiles, why were there so many? Why couldn't they be just made bigger and fewer of them? Why were there so many? What is the booster speed when it's coming down towards those chopsticks? Is it going at a very fast pace, in which case it's likely to keep going? And I presume that the philosophy of Elon Musk is to be able to reuse, to recycle everything so that it can be used more than once. But what worries me about this and about all of this exploration at the moment is that it is doing further damage to our planet, our own planet. It's as if he's given up on Earth and sees the future outside of Earth. And I think that's disappointing, to say the least. I'd like to see those resources put into saving our own Earth environment rather than burning up so much energy sending rockets into space.
Yes, I think as far as the tiles are concerned, I can answer that to some extent. The Air Force, the US Air Force, said, well, this thing is gliding in like a plane, and therefore it has to have a configuration which permits it to glide. That meant that the tiles were all a different shape and size. And of course, you have to bear in mind that the tiles had to fit very closely together. They couldn't afford any gaps. That and the fact that they had already put on several thousand tiles with glue that had spit in it was, well, there was obvious going to be a problem there. As far as saving the Earth is concerned, yes, I agree, but, well, I have no comment. Another question, another comment. Yes, Barry.
Yeah, this may be a silly question, but I'll ask it anyway. One thing I noticed, one of the very early slides where you showed the rockets being fueled up, I was surprised that the fuel silos, the methane and the oxygen, were so close to the launch pad. To my ignorance position, it seems like an accident waiting to happen.
Yes, I agree. Another comment or question? Goodness me, that's surprising. David Tordoff, I see your hand.
Yeah, I may have missed this earlier, but the action of the chopsticks, is it that it captures it by just friction and pressure, or are there any other factors that actually work towards the grab? Is there any magnetism or anything like that?
I can answer that. Although it doesn't grab it round the trunk, it positions itself so that the rocket, the booster rocket, lands on the grid fins. The grid fins are, of course, 16 feet long and 8 feet wide and made of stainless steel. And it's their function not simply to navigate, but to hang in the chopsticks.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
Another question, another comment. Yes, Donal.
Sorry, I had asked a second question. That was what speed are the boosters of the rocket going at when they're grabbed?
I would probably say that as slow as they can make them. Fortunately, of course, on the boosters there are no human beings on board, but even so, it does present a considerable problem. Seeing that the booster weighs 250 tons and lands on the grid fins. More questions? Yes, Tim. No, you're okay.
Yeah, it occurs to me though that his suck and see approach has got him a long way ahead of the others. He hasn't killed anybody yet.
But that's very true, and he has been remarkably 165, I think, landings of the boosters of Falcon 9, and that's jolly good, and I'm very pleased to see that. I watch them every time. I just love to watch them land, but you can't do that with a star booster. It's so much bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah. No questions, no answers. David, your hand.
Oh, sorry. So I was doing a bit of quick feverish research because the thing that intrigued me was how the Mechazilla, but after it's caught the ship, it then repositions it onto the launch platform. And just a quick read, and apparently the goal is to be able to reassemble the stack for launch within an hour.
Right.
Okay. So this is the comment part. The question follows. And so what struck me was, well, why do they need to assemble things so quickly. And it turns out that if they do in-orbit refueling, they need to get 10 tanker loads up to do a full refuel. So obviously you need to set an appropriate cadence for that to happen. Otherwise you're going to leak fuel and everything. So the question is, have they tested in-orbital refueling yet?
Well, I know that they are making a second Mechazilla. Musk has said, in fact, that Mechazilla costs much more than the rocket that it holds. And I can fully understand that. But it's just the interesting thing with the launch deck, which is a very complex bit of operation. So he's using an awful lot of money in order to do that. And they are churning out Raptor engines one a week. They are investing a huge amount in a huge number of devices there. They're working flat out. And you do need an awful lot. Tim Gibbs has his hand up.
Have you any idea how many launches they could do before they have to refurbish the rocket engines?
They haven't launched a single one yet. Only, as far as we've got, is the wet test that we saw on Tuesday. That's as far as we've got. Comments, questions? If not, I shall close. Yes, John.
When the booster lands, is it right that the chopsticks really just don't take its weight initially? They're just to stop it toppling over. And then once it's landed on its fins, then it will lift the whole booster off the ground to reposition it. So is it really there just to initially stop the thing falling over when it lands, rather than to support it?
Are we talking about the Starship or the booster? The booster lands on the grid fins. The grid fins hit the chopsticks. That's as far as I know. The Starship, of course, which have grid fins, will be grabbed by its upper fins at the top, which are navigating to position it correctly in the center between the two chopsticks. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. But when the booster lands, its weight is supported by its fins. So then the chopsticks just are in position to stop it toppling over if it should do. Some of the early Falcon 9 landings fell over.
By its fins, it doesn't have fins. It lands on the grid fins. It doesn't have any other fin.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
Right. We are open for business. I was rather hoping to persuade Lee to tell us a little bit more, because I know that he knows quite a bit about this subject. He's got a private rocket of his own. You can see it taking off in the background.
Yeah, I've raised my hand a couple of times. When the booster comes in and it's grabbed by the chopsticks, I think there's a couple of things. One is they actually do support the full weight of the booster, because it's suspended off the ground. The other thing is that they act as shock absorbers, so I think they're able to move down. The sort of, I don't know whether they're hydraulic or spring loaded, but they take some of the shock out of the process of grabbing all that weight. And the idea is of course that it will come in, like you said, Tom, as slow as possible, so that it minimizes the impact and any damage that might occur. In this scale up they're talking about, the latest figures I've seen is Elon Musk is working to the point where he's hoping to build a Mars colony. He estimates it will take a million metric tons of materials to be moved to Mars in order to make a sustainable colony. And in order to do that, he's planning to be launching 3 Starships a day. So that gives you the sort of the scale of his ambitions.
Yes, It certainly does. I think it's wonderful that people are looking forward as much as that. I said earlier, I think, that some of our grandchildren will see the 22nd century and they will see whether this has succeeded. Their grandchildren, of course, will live in a totally different world. The communication revolution that we are part of now through this Zoom meeting, has changed an awful lot more than simply making emails go faster. And that was, of course, that was my career. Any more questions or comments? If not, I will say thank you very much for joining me and joining us. Do please go and have a look at U3A Communities. We have a splendid program, free of charge. We would love to see you again. We are more than just Barry Zussman and Steve Carpenter, although I'm so pleased that they were able to help me with this particular talk.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thank you. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Good stuff.
Good.
Thank you.